Not that like sharing that knowledge with the world, through the magazine and podcasts and stuff, wasn't fulfilling or important, but like I really just was almost jealous of the people that we were going out and taking pictures of, and just wanted to do it myself.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk podcast, a regular discussion with building industry professionals. Tonight I'm joined with my friend and former colleague, former Fine Homebuilding deputy editor, and now carpenter and man extraordinaire, Matt Millham.
That's a little thick. I don't know. Man extraordinaire.
You
man
can find
child. Yeah.
Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk podcast and the original Fine Homebuilding podcast at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. You can leave feedback and ask questions there too. Well, Matt, it is a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, it's good to be back. At the same time, like, I don't know if I've ever been this nervous going on a podcast, and I used to do it all the time.
And it's a little different. I agree. I'm feeling a little nervous about it too. I decided I could sit down, which I never do because it was after 5, because you worked all day, right?
Yeah, yep. Yeah, I got home, showered real quick, like jammed a couple pieces of pizza in my mouth. And now I'm sitting down. My hair looks like crap.
But we've both resisted starting drinking, which I think is not a small thing, right?
Yeah. I mean, believe me, this is not the condition I wanted to be in at this time.
So I introduced you as a carpenter. Is that a fair description of your job? Is that the accurate job title?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that I really have a job title, I mean, like whatever job I'm at, like I'm usually on the schedule as lead. I don't know that I'd describe myself as a lead carpenter. I'm not, Ian Schwant. But I guess, I do know some things and, kind of can teach people. It's a little bit like being
you're always good at digging into things and figuring things out, which I'm sure is what your company is relying on you to do.
Yeah. I mean, carpentry in general is a lot of problem solving, especially the kind of work that we're doing, because we're almost working exclusively in like old houses and old agricultural or like outbuildings that are being turned into houses. So there's a lot of, just constant problems where you're, working with things that are out of level, out of square, and then dealing with things that were maybe not done according to plans or were done according to plans and things changed. And so now you got to figure out how to fit code compliant stairway in an opening that wasn't made for it. So yeah, stuff like that.
So what is the company you're working for, and like what is a normal day for you generally like?
The company I work for is called Art of Building. They're in Rhinebeck, New York. Almost all of the projects that they have are in Rhinebeck. There are a few that are sort of like very close. I mean, I don't think I've had to drive farther than 20 minutes to anything. And it's a lot of like, working on a lot of old houses. There's a lot of old houses around here. It's the mid-Hudson Valley. Rhinebeck itself was originally, I think, a Dutch settlement. So, there's a lot of old Dutch architecture, old Dutch barns, and they do, I would say, a lot of it is sort of second homes for people from the city. We're about 90 miles or so north of New York City. And especially, during the pandemic, I mean, tons of people just, flooded out of the city. And this is, we're still, I guess, considered commuting distance. I mean, if you live in this,
it is crazy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you live in the city, like, if you're like, right outside of, or I mean, possibly even if you're like in Brooklyn or Queens, it could take you more than an hour to get to Manhattan. What's 2 hours?
Yeah. Wow.
But I mean, I did the commute for a while. I mean, my first job out of college was in Manhattan, and I grew up in New Paltz, and I still lived there, which is only, linear distance, probably 20, 25 miles south of where I am now. So, yeah.
It's not for me. I'll just say that.
Yeah. No, it's a terrible commute. Nobody should do that.
So how many employees are in your company, and like, what's the breakdown of what they do?
There are about 15 of us. I would say, let's see, probably 4 or 5 are sort of like would probably be considered leads. There are a bunch of apprentices, and then there is an architect, project manager, and then the guy who's pretty much my boss, one of the owners, who sort of like oversees all of the construction activities. But yeah,
you mentioned an architect, is it a design build firm? You guys do your own designs, or is that not
yeah,
necessarily the case?
yeah, they're doing, and they used to sort of, I guess, hire it out. They had an engineer that they would hire to, do a lot of the work, a lot of the plans and stuff like that. And I think they wanted to have more control over that because, there's a little bit of a disconnect between a designer and the carpenters sometimes. And just trying to like get answers quickly or get something figured out, having that in-house definitely makes it a lot easier. I mean, there are times where I go in, because I'm looking at the plans and I'm looking at what's actually in front of me, built, and I'm like, I don't know how this is supposed to work. It's impossible. And then it's like, these are the actual dimensions, like what is supposed to happen here. And then it's like, oh yeah, that needs to be cut back.
Is that a source of friction, or are they pretty accommodating?
No. I mean, it's great. I mean, my relationship, I would say, with the architect is, pretty good. Although we haven't really worked together much in the last probably month and a half. But yeah, the previous project she was in charge of, and we talked every day, and there was a lot of back and forth, and she doesn't, she's not a carpenter, obviously. She's an architect, and so sometimes it's just a conversation about
how should we do this?
Yeah, how can this actually be done? Like rather than sort of like in the computer world.
In your former world, in my world, we've always described the design build model as a way to kind of smooth out that difficult construction process between design and the build. Have you found that to be true?
I would say, because they're sort of just kind of getting into this, I would say yes. Probably, but I haven't necessarily experienced that entirely, because the project that I've been working on for the last probably about 2 months now, was all based on plans from this, this engineering firm. And I would say the plans are at best scant. And, like there are just tons of things, like it seems like most stuff is not dimensioned. Like you just have no idea exactly what's supposed to be what. The framing
that must drive you bananas.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you know me, I'm sure, like, people listening to this don't know me, but like, I like spend an inordinate amount of time reading instructions and manuals and books on various things.
Yeah.
Mostly because, like, it's not necessarily like I want to learn like the right way to do things, because there's often like a million ways to do things sort of correctly. But, when it comes to like a set of instructions for whether it's like installing a window or the plans for a house, like I want to know, like there is an actual answer there. Like, it's not just like up to what I want to do or what I think is right, or
at a minimum, there should be dimensions.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pulling out the, like my architectural ruler a lot of times, like, okay, this box is not there. And then you got to go back and be like, is this box supposed to be where it is now? Or is it where it's supposed to be on the plans? Or what's going on here? Yeah.
I'm sure there are many tradespeople out there who listen to the show that think working at Fine Homebuilding would be a dream job, and they would wonder why you would take a pay cut to work outside in bad weather in a physically demanding job, and why?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of reasons actually behind that. So, I mean, I'd been in media for essentially my entire career up to that point, really. When I left Fine Homebuilding, with the exception of the 2 years that I went to trade school. I'd gone to school for journalism, and then I, for some reason, went into the Army for 8 years, where I was a print journalist, and a large chunk of that was with the daily newspaper Stars and Stripes, which I then continued to work for after another media job, went back to Stars and Stripes as a civilian reporter, and did that for 4 years. And I I just was kind of burned out on that, sort of daily newspaper reporting and covering kind of, it almost feels like Groundhog Day when you're, covering the military. Like it's always the same things. And I'm sure it's that way whether you're covering like City Hall or, whatever sort of beat, like things just sort of repeat themselves. Anyway, so I had always wanted to build my own house, and I had no idea how I would actually do that. And I'd already been spending probably for a couple of years, like, reading carpentry books and looking at a lot of stuff on YouTube. And I got really into natural building and like, really wanted to build a cob house. Not that probably a lot of people know what that is. But anyway, I had the GI Bill and I was like, yeah, I'm just going to quit my job and go to trade school. So I did that. And, I was super happy during that time. I had a really great time in school. I was an older student, late 30s, and, just really wanted to be there. So I got a lot out of it and worked for a couple builders, very different builders. One was a natural builder, one was more conventional, during my time there. And I don't think I was ever happier. Like I just had like such a great time. But I had gotten, basically my advisor at school had recommended, that he saw this Fine Homebuilding job pop up for an associate editor, and he was like, "You'd be perfect for that." And I'm like, haha, because I didn't know really jack squat about building. I'd been in school for like about a year and a half, I think, at that point, or something like that. But just, on a lark, I guess I applied and I got it, and, started working at Fine Homebuilding a week after graduating from trade school. So I still had the itch to build, and now I'm 44, and I wasn't getting any younger, and my back's not getting better or strong. Maybe it's getting stronger now, I don't know, but definitely sitting in a chair for 4 years, like just occasionally going out to take pictures and stuff. I was not getting more fit. That's definitely true. But then also my wife got pregnant in July.
Congratulations.
And, yeah, thank you. And so I was like, if I'm ever going to try to build, like go out and, do that thing that I had gone to school for and, thought I wanted to do at least for a portion of my life, beyond that 2 years, it's sort of like now or never, because it's going to be much harder to quit Fine Homebuilding
Yeah.
and quit a good paying job and take a job as, like when I applied for the job that I have now, I mean, I said, I don't know where I would fit in. Like I may just be an apprentice. I don't know what my skill set is compared to what everybody else is. It's kind of weird coming from Fine Homebuilding where you see really sort of like the best at what they do, whether it's like installing shower doors or building roofs or whatever.
And it would be very easy to feel like an imposter when you try and join the
absolutely.
The leagues.
Like I was just like, I know nothing. Like I see Ryan Smith, Roof Slayer, and the stuff that is in his head. And I'm like, I don't know if I spent the rest of my life doing that, if I would ever be able to be as good at framing roofs as he is. Or like Mike Gerton, who just has like an encyclopedic knowledge of everything. But I mean, I still wanted to give it a shot. I wanted to try it, not necessarily to be the best at it, but just to try doing it and see if I could make a living at it and, I guess have some fun.
Yeah.
Away from a desk. So
what do you think? Are you liking it? How's it going?
Yeah, I would say it's going great. I mean, I would say it was a little bit of a shock, sort of like coming in and, like I said, I didn't really have a lot of expectations. I didn't know if I was going to be an apprentice or like just a regular carpenter or what, and then sort of to be put in charge starting on like, I think probably day 5 or 6 of projects. And like, they're like, all right, you're the guy. And it's like, when you don't have you don't have a lot of experience and you're coming in and being told that, it's kind of like, am I like, like, I don't know that I have the, like, I don't even know that I have I mean, I know I don't have a ton of experience, but I don't even know if I have if I can step away enough to be like, yeah, maybe I am the guy for this.
Yeah. Well, it's tough to be objective about your own skills, and a new job is always intimidating in that regard. I'm sure you'd agree.
Yeah. But I mean, I think a lot of it is, and, now having been doing it for a whopping 4 months, that, a lot of it is just like, I guess, being conscientious, and paying attention to details.
Yeah.
Which
And
is
caring.
it seems like, yeah, it just seems like that seems to be missing in some people. I wouldn't say, I mean, I work with a lot of, I mean, a lot of people with different backgrounds and skills, but also a lot of subs. I mean, there's a decent amount of work that's not done by us, I mean, because a lot of times they're working with like old timber frames that have to be like basically stripped, disassembled, repaired, and put back together, stuff like that. I mean, there's nobody outside. None of us are like in the timber framers guild, but there are people who are, and they're relying on them. But also, for all the trades and stuff like that. And most of those guys are really good, but like with the I don't know, with the people on staff, some are really good and pay attention to details, and some you really have to like sort of, I don't want to say babysit, but you got to kind of,
Keep
like
an eye on them.
watch.
Yeah.
Keep an eye on them. And it doesn't matter whether it's like somebody who has, 15 years experience, 20 years experience, or someone who's new. I mean, like there are some apprentices who are just fantastic, and there are some other people who,
Are not.
have a lot of experience who I don't really want to have on my job site.
So what's been the biggest surprise about this career change?
It's probably that, what I was just talking about, the fact that there are some people, and I mean, it's the case in whatever job, that there are people that just kind of fell into it. But I think with building in particular, because there's such a low barrier to entry, that, there's a lot of people who sort of just are there because it was so easy to be there. Like, it's like, you apply for some of these jobs or you see the job listings and they're like, must have driver's license and hand tools. And it's like, okay, are you able to lift a 2x4? Yes. Okay. You're hired. And there are some people that just seem to not really want to progress beyond that, and they're happy to do that for their entire career. And so, when you see some of these other job listings that say must have 15 years experience, like I've come to realize that 15 years of carpentry experience doesn't really mean jack squat, because that doesn't tell you that they have actually learned anything in those years, or anything that's actually going to be useful or, produce quality work. So, yeah.
So what do you like about it, and what would you change if you could?
I think probably the thing I like most about it is sort of sharing what limited knowledge that I have with the people who are interested in it, and learning, stuff from other people. I mean, there are some good carpenters out there, or, working with this company, and that's probably what I wanted to get out of it more than anything, is just, learn more stuff. I mean, I learned every day at Fine Homebuilding, and I just wanted to be able to actually use some of that knowledge, because it kind of felt like it was going to waste in a sense. That, not that like sharing that knowledge with the world, through the magazine and podcasts and stuff, wasn't fulfilling or important, but like I really just was almost jealous of the people that we were going out and taking pictures of, and just wanted to do it myself, at least for a little bit, while I'm still capable.
Did it live up to expectations in that regard?
Yes and no. I mean, I'll say that, I do like working on old houses to an extent, but,
it's a pain.
It's a little bit of a pain. I mean, like I said, there's tons of problem solving and everything like that. And I would like to work on, sort of like not high-end houses. I mean, the houses that we're working on are like, very expensive properties, but just, I guess, like energy efficient, like, I don't necessarily want to do passive houses or anything, but I wouldn't mind spending like my whatever building career is going to be like building pretty good houses.
Mhm.
Like that to me would be, like ideal, I think, sort of like being able to plan and execute from the beginning to the end. And, there's just no place really around here that I know of right now that's doing that, or that's like close enough that I want to drive there. I'm like,
Yeah.
do I want to do I want to drive to Woodstock every day? Probably not. I mean, it's not that far, but it is 45 minutes versus what I have now, which is 15 to 20 minutes. So
That's quality of life has a lot to do with one's commute. I at least for me.
yeah, and I mean that was the thing, also, going, if we were going to be back in the office, like my commute to Fine Homebuilding was an hour and 15 minutes every
Crazy.
day.
Yeah.
So, which was, not the worst commute I've ever had by a long shot, but still was, like what, 12 hours a week that
Yeah,
I
it's a
wasn't
lot of
getting
time
back.
you're not getting anything really for. Right? You might catch up on your podcast or your books on tape, but it's a lot
Yeah.
of gas and a lot of time.
And I will say I do kind of miss that because I did listen to a lot of podcasts, and now, having such a short commute, like it takes me multiple days to get through one episode of something. So like I've fallen way behind on my podcast diet.
So did Suny Delhi prepare you adequately to become a builder?
I would have to say absolutely, although it's really hard for me to like sort of differentiate what I learned from there versus Fine Homebuilding. I mean, I would say that like all of the basic construction stuff, I mean, I took classes in remodeling and masonry and, framing and advanced framing, estimating, all that stuff. I mean, I would say like I'm years obviously ahead of where I would be like coming in as an apprentice or something like that.
Is the
Just
book
because
knowledge enough though? I mean,
well,
obviously
that's the
you had
thing.
to
Like,
do
I mean,
labs.
yeah, I mean, you spend a lot of time in labs, so you do get a lot of hands-on experience with that. And just, yeah, like understanding like layouts and stuff like that. I mean, one of our newer apprentices, he'd actually started, I think, a month or two before I did, but he didn't have any framing experience or anything like that. And I was, on my first project, and someone had given him the job. This was before I was in charge at that site, and someone was like, "Oh yeah, just frame this like basically little pony wall," and I don't know, probably about 50 feet away. I mean, it was in this barn, like this long structure, and I could see him laying it out, and he was putting in the studs like one at a time, and from that distance I could tell that it was not 16 inches on center because he was so far off. And I went up to like try to figure out what he was doing, and he was like, yeah, you could do this and then you measure over 16 inches and you put another stud and you measure, and I'm like, no, that's not the way it works, man. But like he's a kid who really wants to learn, and he's like, I love working with him because he's not afraid to ask questions. It's just, he was the person who gave him the task was someone who wouldn't answer questions, and so I think at that point he didn't know that it was okay to ask questions. But for me, I love when people ask questions. I ask a lot of questions. I don't want to I don't want to do things incorrectly. I don't want to have to do them again. I spend a lot of time right now sort of like doing other people's stuff over again. And
That's
that was a lot of today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think there were any gaps and stuff that the Suny Delhi program should be teaching folks in the building program?
It's hard to say. I mean, there's only so much you can cram into 2 years, like I would say I did take a green building class, but I would say still that the majority of stuff, and it may have been just because I wasn't really processing exactly everything that I was learning at Delhi, but it seems like most of my sort of building science knowledge came from my time at Fine Homebuilding and just, being exposed to like Christine Williamson and Joe Stiebrick and stuff. And I mean, it's funny because we did watch like at least one video I remember with Joe Stiebrick, in trade school, but, like actually being able, like emailing with him and like asking him
Right?
questions and stuff
Right?
is a totally different experience than just watching some weird YouTube video with some
It's
guy
like
you've never like you don't know from Adam.
it's like working for Rolling Stone versus watching MTV, right?
Yeah, well, and that's the other thing. Like in trade school, you don't really have a sense of like how important these people are to the craft, you know? Like they're just to me, honestly, I was just like, okay, this is some guy. And then it's like, oh wait, no, this actually is the guy.
This is the guy who
It's
came up
like,
with a thing.
this is totally different. Like, holy, yeah, I didn't even know who I was talking to. Holy shit.
So do your former professors at Delhi know what you're doing?
Some of them do. It's, you know, I like I almost feel bad. So like I took the job that I have now, and probably a day or two later, the guy who actually had recommended me for the Fine Homebuilding job, he had just left Delhi, or actually no, I think he had left about a year earlier to start his own construction business. And he had been the chair of the program. He's, you know, great builder, also a great instructor, and just an all-around great guy. And I really like him a lot. And he, you know, texted me. He was like, "Hey, any interest in coming out to Delaware County and, you know, working with me?" And I was like, I absolutely would if, you know, I weren't living in Dutchess County and my, you know, weren't expecting a baby and hadn't just started another job 2 days ago. But, you know, and I would still run out there, you know. But yeah, I mean, they some of them know what I'm doing, and I think
Are they surprised? Are they like, why did you leave this great job at Fine Home?
No, I mean they knew that I was interested in leaving because I had asked a bunch of them if they would be references for me.
That's kind of a giveaway.
Yeah. So they were like, "Oh, cool, you're thinking of moving on?" I'm like, "Yeah." So I don't know, but I mean, I am still working with the magazine. I'm, you know, on a freelance basis, I guess. So, you know, I still interact, you know, with Samantha Maver a lot more than I interact with you, but
She's lucky.
yeah, I don't know about that, but
So we should tell folks you're still doing the Know the Code department for the magazine, which you excelled at for sure.
yeah, I think that's like a hot potato that nobody else wants. And I, you know, had enough of a handle on it that, you know, I was asked to stay on for that, and I did.
I can tell you I am grateful personally.
Yeah.
So, you know, there are so many opportunities for carpenters that you like so many different ways you can go. You can manage projects, you can do specialty finish carpentry, framing. Is there anything that you could see yourself doing in the future that would be more specialized?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I don't know. I mean, I really like being a generalist, I think. You know, I like every day is different. Like, you know, I think I would get bored. You know, like I said, you know, I may have been in media for, you know, most of my career, but I don't think I was in any place more than 4 years at a time. Like even when I was at Stripes, I was there for 3 years. Then I was in Afghanistan for couple years, you know, like outside of Stripes. Then I was back in Afghanistan for Stripes. Then I was back in Europe, Euro. And like, you know, even in that time that I was, you know, sort of like at one place, I was not there for any more than 4 years. And that's been the case with everything other than, including really Fine Homebuilding, where I was, you know, a little over 4 years. That's about my MO, 4 years and go.
Well, you know, yeah.
I think I just get bored really easily, and you know, I always want to try something else. So, you know, I think I would have a hard time specializing in something. That said, I mean, I think, you know, I don't know that I have a better than average ability to pay attention to details, but maybe I do, and so, you know, maybe being on the sort of like oversight side and making sure that people do things right. The problem is that I have a hard time not getting my hands on things and, you know, like just doing it myself. A lot of times, even if it's slower, it's easier sometimes because then you know, I won't probably move until I know what I'm doing.
Uh-huh.
So I'm less likely to screw it up, maybe. I mean, I'm slow. Everybody, like, I mean, I was slow as an editor too. I mean, my stuff was like routinely sort of like in past deadline just because I needed to check everything 500 times. And, I'm that way as a carpenter too. I don't think anybody's going to, hire me to, sort of like build their
Frame
house.
production houses.
Yeah, frame production houses. Like, I'm not that guy.
So what would you tell someone who wanted to get into the trades for their first, second, even third career? What would you tell them to do?
I mean, I think the main thing is just, be conscientious and curious. I mean,
but how do you get the job? I mean, like,
how
do
do
you
you
just
get
go
the
bang
job?
on someone's door?
Literally, I mean, there's so many ways. Yeah. I mean, if you see a builder that you want to work for, just go ask them. Because, I mean, a lot of places are like almost constantly hiring, I mean, they may be looking for people all the time. They're just not necessarily, posting their jobs on Craigslist or Indeed or whatever. I think walk on is probably a great way, I mean, especially if you have researched the company because you think you want to work there.
How would you tell folks to do that? Because we've always said in fine home building land that figure out the good builder and go work for them instead of the schlocky one.
Yeah. How do you do that? I mean, that's tough. I mean, I guess, Instagram can be a good thing. It can also be misleading, like just because there's pretty pictures doesn't mean that they, are.
It doesn't mean it's a smooth running company at a minimum,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And there may you don't necessarily understand the process from the pictures, like how it got to there. So I don't know. I mean, you may have to, take some swings and miss, like you may have to work for some people and, it turns out it's not a right fit, but that's the case with any job,
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, even
Do you
if you go
think
to
there are a
medical
lot of
school,
opportunities for people who are, coming from another career?
I would say absolutely. I mean, I would say, I mean, myself included, like probably half of the company that I'm working for now are people who just sort of like trickled in from other things. Like one guy was a dog walker, another guy worked in the weed industry and was a Lyft driver.
Those things seem mutually exclusive to me. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
Well, I mean, so I mean, they're sort of like all over the place, and they're just kind of like another guy was in like pool maintenance, I think. So, that companies that are looking to grow, and especially now, there's so much work out there. Companies are really looking for people, and they're looking for anybody who's like eager to work and willing to learn.
Have you heard similar things from your subcontractor friends in the business?
Yeah, I mean, some of the subs, I mean, they have, placards on the backs of their vans, saying like now hiring, and like, call this number, blah, 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 blah. I don't know what they're looking for in terms of experience. Like I have 0 HVAC experience and like it's still, like I have a copy of fundamentals somewhere back there, but I cannot make heads or tails of it because I did not go to engineering school.
Yeah, I think anybody who wants to work and has a modicum of motivation can find a career in the trades right now. Who knows what's going to happen when the next downturn comes, which we all expect it will, but we're kind of in uncharted territory. I think you'd agree.
Yeah. The hard part is like, if you don't have a frame of reference, and like I feel lucky to have had like a great frame of reference by having gone to trade school and then working at Fine Homebuilding to like be able to really like know what a good builder looks like, and if you're just coming in off the street and like, you're like, I think I want to go work for a builder, like it may take you a long time to figure out that they aren't maybe the best at what they do.
Yeah. And you would never know that unless you had, like you said, this experience or some kind of context for what a good builder is.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your place. That was one of the recurring themes in the regular podcast about
Yeah.
what you were doing on your place. So is it a burden to work on your own house now that you're a builder?
I wouldn't say that it's a burden to work on it. I actually have more time to work on it now because my hours are, 7:30 to 4. So I get home, and I mean, there's no daylight now, but for a long time there was. And then, I'm just not. I don't have to, other than the work I'm still doing for the magazine. I have a lot more free time. It seems like. But yeah, so I do work on my own house. Some of it, like, because we have a child on the way, what had been my office, which is still kind of my office. I would show you what this place looks like now, but it's an absolute embarrassment. It's like, I mean, there's
You're
just
making
crap
a
all over the
nursery,
floor.
I'm gathering.
Yeah, so this is going to
Yeah.
get turned into a nursery. What was it? Maybe a month ago, our refrigerator. Actually, what happened a month ago is we got an electrical bill that was $150 more than usual,
Oh my.
and so went around with a usage monitor, like plugging in every
kilowatt, yeah.
appliance, like a wattage thing, and found that our refrigerator was like using like 6 times more electricity than it was supposed to. So don't rely on the measurements that are provided on the fridge, that which is a
I think
lesson.
that means when it's new, not when it's 10
new.
years old, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, even the refrigerator that we had to take out, like I had to take the doors off to like get it out of the kitchen. Or rather, the guys delivering the new refrigerator, like I took the doors off for them, but they took it out. But getting the new fridge in, we were like, okay, we can't get anything to the doorway that's bigger than this. And so they were like, oh, we can't take the doors off this thing. I'm like, you absolutely can, and you're going to have to, because it's not getting it's not getting to the kitchen if you don't. And like after like they tried to get it through with the doors on, they were like, fine, we'll take them off. So they took them off, still wouldn't fit. And like the dimensions that were given by the box store were not correct. So, we had done that article, like, what was it? 1 bed kitchen, 3 good designs. And so I'd been wanting to remodel my kitchen for a long time anyway. And this just sort of kickstarted it. I knocked down a wall so I could get the fridge through. And I'm sort of like,
why these delivery people were there?
No, I just had him leave. I was like, just leave the refrigerator in the living room, and I'm just going to take this wall out, and then I'll bring the fridge in.
Oh man.
So that's part of it.
No better way to get motivated than that.
Yeah. And then like the whole office area, all of that's moving to the basement. So I've been redoing basically all the electrical down there. It had a drop ceiling. I ripped that out. Had to rewire all the lighting because that was all like just draped over the top of this drop ceiling.
It's amazing how common that is. I've seen that before.
Oh
It's
my
like
God.
people, the ceiling will hold it up. It's fine.
Yeah. Oh my God. It was terrible. So yeah.
So what's Heather think about your new career? Did she question you when you wanted to leave Fine Homebuilding?
No, she was encouraging me because she knew, I don't want to say I was miserable, but I mean, how sort of busy we were and understaffed.
Yeah.
And I imagine you're still dealing with it. And so, I was just working all hours of the day and night and weekends, and I didn't really, and I mean, I do this to myself, but, I was just spending an insane amount of time working on
Magazine
content, on magazine stuff. And, I was just like short-tempered. I'm sure I was terrible to like be around. And she was like, yeah, you should try something else. And I did. And, she said, you're in a much better mood now all the time, because work stops when work stops. I get home and I don't have to think about it again until tomorrow. Like, they're not paying me, like I'm not on salary to be thinking about stuff when I'm not there. Like if they want me to think about it, they can pay me for it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the greatest challenges of our jobs in the editorial side of Fine Homebuilding is that it's
Never
difficult to
turn it
get
off.
away from it. Yeah,
Yeah,
really
you
difficult.
can't ever turn it off. It's just like it becomes your life. And while I enjoyed it, it was probably not the greatest thing for my mental health.
Yeah.
Especially the kind of person I am would, become somewhat obsessive about things. So
So I didn't mention it at the time, but you had to move into the basement now that your baby's coming, which is
Yeah,
how it goes.
that's it. I probably belong down there. I look like a troll. I should be down there, down in the basement with the bugs.
Well, it has been a pleasure talking to you and catching up with you. Is there anything you want to ask or tell our audience before we go?
I don't know. Just be curious. Learn stuff. Always be learning. That's all I can say, really. I mean, if you're not the kind of person who's like wants to learn stuff, then you're probably not going to excel at building.
Well said. Well, it was a great conversation, man. Thank you.
Yeah, it was great seeing you again. I hope we can actually meet in person, preferably over beers
I want
sometime
to
soon.
come visit you and see your place and meet your new baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks to Matt Millham for joining us, and thanks to all of you for listening. Please remember to send us your comments, questions, and suggestions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. And please like, comment, or review us however you're listening. It helps other folks find our podcast. Stay safe, everybody. Keep craft alive. Happy building. Thanks, Matt.
Bye.